I now call the July 8th, 2014 work session of the Riverton City Council to order at 7 p.m. Would Councilmember Smith lead us in the pledge, please?
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Would the city clerk conduct the roll call, please?
Yes, Your Honor. Councilman Rich Guard.
Here.
Councilman Martin Canan.
Here.
Councilwoman Mary Ellen Christensen.
Present.
Councilman Jonathan Fabian.
Here.
Councilman Kyle Larson.
Here.
Councilman Todd Smith.
Here.
Mayor Ron Wartness.
And I am present. I declare that we have a quorum this evening. The chair would entertain a motion for the approval of the agenda.
Your Honor, I would move for the approval of the agenda.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. City parking lot regulations discussion. Chief of Police report, please.
Good evening, Your Honor, Council. There is a parking lot at the southwest corner of Fremont and Broadway that the city owns, and there's been some discussion at previous council meetings that perhaps the council would like to regulate that lot. Currently, it's not regulated at all, so we wanted to open the discussion this evening to get direction from council if there is any. The issue appears to be that there are a number of commercial vehicles parked long-term in that lot. Recently I was down there. I believe there were at least seven different companies that had one or more vehicles parked there, and mostly they're commercial vehicles. Some of them are commercial trailers. I went down there this evening just to drive by, and there's actually a commercial truck and trailer parked on Fremont right outside of the lot as well. That was relevant to me only because one of the business owners in the area that I spoke to in the last couple of weeks was concerned that if we regulated that lot to try to keep some of that commercial traffic out of there, that it would end up on the street. And that's kind of occurring a little bit at least already. So there are a number of things we could do to try to solve a problem down there, but we're not sure if you all feel there is a problem or not. And so we just wanted to have a discussion about it to see if there's something that you would like to have happen to that lot, or if you'd like to leave it at the status quo.
Okay. Thank you. Council have any comments regarding the lot?
Sir?
Yes.
Chief,
Councilman Canan.
is there a problem with, other than the commercial vehicles, which I assume are being used on a semi-daily basis, is there a number of vehicles down there that are like sitting in the same spot for days or weeks or months on end?
Yes, sir. It does appear to me, I haven't, chalked the tires of any of those vehicles, but it doesn't look like some of those vehicles move much at all. It's more of a long-term storage lot, I think, for some of those companies. Some of those companies are not even located close to the lot. And again, this only has come up a few times. I'm not receiving any complaints about it from people generally, but it seems like when we want to have a city event down there, or for Halloween night, that a lot of those spaces are taken by these companies long term, and that reduces the amount of people who are able to park and get into downtown for those events. On a day-to-day basis, I don't see much of a problem. There's about 100 spaces down there, more or less, and it seems like there's a good 30 to 40 available on any general day.
I guess, sir, my comment would be is that I'm more concerned about if somebody's, like the chief said, making it, using it as a storage lot, then I think that probably that's not what it was intended for. But if they're parking a commercial vehicle there that they're using every day, I guess doesn't bother me as much. I'd hate to see, like you said, turn it into just a long-term storage for somebody that wants to park a truck or a trailer there for the next 6 months.
Okay. Any other comments? Yeah. Councilman Christensen.
So there's been really no complaints about anybody parking there,
Really
commercial
not.
or otherwise?
No, ma'am. Mostly what we've heard is actually from the council having this discussion. So I'm not really getting any complaints. I hear grumbling on occasion, but no specific complaints with a solution. I did go several months ago and speak to each of the companies that had commercial vehicles parked in that lot, and really they were not interested in voluntarily moving them. They use that lot and they expect to use it, and there wasn't a lot of movement there.
The last couple of weeks, I've just been kind of keeping an eye on it, in the morning and evening, and there seems like there's been a lot of empty spaces, even with the commercial vehicles. I don't know if there's no complaints. if it's not broke yet, let's maybe not fix it. I think I don't know what we'd do if we take them out of there. They will park on the side streets to block a lot of other businesses. I'm worried about.
Yes. No, I don't believe there's any regulations at all on it, is there?
Your Honor, there's not.
Your Honor,
Yes, Councilman Guard.
the history of that lot was that it was, all of downtown is grandfathered from parking from, I think, 6th Street to 1st Street by Martin Lumber. And so businesses in that area are not required to furnish parking, say like Mr. Larson was last week when he was in. The city can actually say you have to supply so many spaces for your retail business. And the beauty of that is on Main Street, you can open a business and not be held to the parking requirements. And they did pass it was funded by those same blocks of tax, and I believe it was a little over $3,000, our portion that we paid, because we had a building on 6th and Fremont at the time. And that money went to build that. I don't think it's very well advertised that that's available city parking. So, if you work at the Ranger, you had to walk a full block or better, block and a half, to park your vehicle there. And I think that was the concept, was for those long-term parking individuals that work all day at a business, they could park there without being hassled about where they parked on a side street or anywhere else. And it doesn't seem to be fulfilling that if we have empty spaces all day long. Is the lot conducive for a truck and trailer to even pull in to the lot? I don't think it is it, Chief?
Well, it depends on the size of the truck and trailer. It seems like it gets a lot of use from, like a 3/4 ton pickup with a cargo trailer, like a 25 foot cargo trailer. That seems to be the most proficient use of it for commercial purposes, not tractor trailers.
When you said truck and trailer, I envisioned a tractor trailer. Is that what's parked on the side street?
No, it's like a 1 ton with a flatbed and a 4-wheeler on the flatbed.
And the only other real close parking is at the Teton or Saratoga Teton. All of their apartments park there, but
Right.
a lot of their patrons don't have vehicles, and I think some of those vehicles sit a long time between usage. So,
They've got some garages back there as well.
and so, I question too, if it's not broken, what are we going to fix? I don't know what the complaints are. I've had discussions with citizens that they thought that was poor use of city revenue, but I don't know how we charge for it, or I don't know that that's a good idea to leave long-term parking for businesses that are actually located blocks and blocks away from that location. I suppose they just feel like it's city supplied, and that's a good, safe place to put it. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. Any other comments?
Your Honor,
Yes, Councilman Fabian.
who does the snow removal? Is that done by the city? In that parking
Who what?
lot? Snow removal? None?
I believe we remove snow there.
Okay. Thank you.
I know when that was originally built, as Councilman Guard pointed out, it was paid for by the local businesses that were in proximity to that. And I recall that they had looked like a bullseye, and it had concentric circles around it. And the farther you were away from it, the less money you paid. And the closer you got to it, the more you paid. And so those folks that were very close to it had to pay a pretty good chunk in order to, and it was a local improvement district where they didn't ask you if you wanted to pay it. Everybody voted on it, and you got stuck with the bill. And as I understood it, it was to provide parking for businesses that work, not necessarily for the customers, but so that it would free up the parking on Main Street. And that's the only concern that I've heard, is that there's a lot of people that complain that there is no parking on Main Street for businesses and whatnot. And I think if they could be more encouraged to have their employees park in the parking lot that was designed for it, then we wouldn't have some of the pressure that we have downtown. But given our culture, well, if we have to walk 50 feet, well, it's too far. And so we want to be able to park right up next to the front door, or there's no parking available, which isn't quite accurate. But I can remember my parents having to come up with, sticks in my mind, it was $4,500. And that was a time when they didn't have it, and it was quite an imposition, and there was a lot of discussion about it and whatnot. But having paid for a parking lot myself, I know how expensive parking is. And I guess this is a facility that belongs to the citizens of Riverton, and so you would think that there would be some way that some of the commercial vehicles that park there on a regular, ongoing, long-term basis could help subsidize some of the costs of the city. I don't disagree that it would be difficult to come up with a mechanism to know how to charge them or give them a pass, but I do know that parking lots are very expensive propositions when you go to build them, and for the city of Riverton and its citizens to just be giving that to 7 different companies that leave their vehicles there for indeterminate lengths of time doesn't seem quite fair. But given all of the needs that we have in our community, I think the greatest discussion came about when we were having the discussion regarding the farmers market and that whole issue, and that seems to have been resolved by moving it down to 5th Street. And so that's kind of taken that off of the burner, so we don't have quite the discussion now. But I don't know. I see we have a member of the community, perhaps Mr. Gores would like to share his wisdom on this, in as much as he uses that parking lot, he and his staff. And if you have any ideas, Jim, or any comments that you'd like to make? Hate to put you on the spot like this, but we're all on the spot, it seems like.
Yes, Mayor, I was going to thank you for picking on us. No, we have 2 commercial vehicles there of our own. Normally, one of them is kept at one of our homes or one of the employees' homes overnight, and we may have one there during the evening hours. Customarily, we'll have them there when employees are not out in the field, but other than that, that's just 2 vehicles.
Yes.
And
As I recall, snow removal is a problem in that area. Sometimes.
well, it's non-existent, yes.
Yeah, and that's what I'm getting at. But when we have a heavy snow or something, and then the alley, there's some of the businesses, I think, push the snow into the parking lot. I recall some of those moguls that you developed down there.
It can be a challenge at times, yes.
Your classic understatement.
Your Honor, I think
Yes.
last time I was in there in the winter, it was pretty much a skating rink. That
Yes.
there was kind
There,
of tough.
yeah.
I'm worried about the people in Sertoma.
Yeah, my personal observation is that there's not too much difficulty with that, or at least none that I'm aware of, in regards to those elderly people that live in Sertoma. Yeah, at times it can get pretty icy,
Yeah, it was.
but that's usually early fall and late spring when we're warm in the days and freezing at night. But, I mean, all in all, it works pretty well as a city parking lot. And Mary, you're correct, that was built with a improvement district funding many years ago, and was built at the time Downstown had more active businesses in it, and that was a concern to people, particularly in the day and age when we had parking meters down there. But, all in all, it seems to function pretty well. There are times when events are going on downtown that it would be, certainly a courtesy to the general public to have those commercial vehicles parked elsewhere. There are a fair number of them that do overnight there on a frequent basis.
Your Honor,
Yes, thank you.
would it be possible to add some signage on Main Street that there was parking available in another location? Maybe they might not be able to see it for the trees, but we could maybe get it out in front of the trees.
I know when Main Street was rebuilt recently, that was one of the things that we looked at was the signage, and we tried to do everything we could to keep a minimum number of signs on Main Street. That's why we don't have signs that, describe the hours that you can park and those kind of things. Legally, if you're going to enforce that, it's my understanding you have to have 4 signs per block, and we just felt to clutter up the blocks, with all of the signage, would destroy the aesthetics of what we were trying to do, and so, but that would certainly be a possibility.
Your Honor, when the chief spoke with the businesses, they weren't thrilled. Did they give you any idea where they could park besides there?
Your Honor, the conversation that I was referring to, one of the business owners was her employees parked there, and so she just didn't want us to mess with the lot because she liked it the way it was. And the other business owner specifically said, please don't kick the commercial vehicles out because then they're going to park on the street, and that's where my customers park. So.
Is there a way, Chief, do you know of establishing a parking permit, or that's not terribly, there is, the mayor makes a good point. There's going to come a time when that has to be resurfaced and maintained, and it'll come right out of the city budget. Possibly you could revenue some kind of money out of it. I'm afraid that once you start to charge, the place is bare again, because there's no parking costs on any other street, and we just impact the areas around it because no one wants to pay their parking fee.
I think that's accurate. There are ways that we could set up permit parking there. We've talked about we could limit overnight parking for commercial vehicles and things that they'd have to be relatively easy to enforce, or frankly they won't get enforced. If we don't have the personnel to go down there and chalk tires and time the amount of time that vehicles are parked there. So if we're going to enact something like that, it'd have to be something pretty clear and pretty easy to enforce that a patrolling officer could do just on the way through, as opposed to some dedicated kind of time to try to figure out that time. So, permits take a little bit of time just to verify, who is it that you want to be able to get a permit there? Is it the residents who live in the downtown area, just the businesses that are in the downtown area? Those things could be checked. It would just take some, a clerk's time to meet with those folks and then issue them a permit. So it's certainly doable. It's just a question of whether you want to do that or not. Your Honor, we certainly could do any of those things. I guess it's really just a question of what is the ultimate goal, and if we had an idea what it was, the vision of what we're trying to accomplish, there are probably a number of ways to get there. I know from Stephen and my conversations, we just don't know if there really is a goal that we're trying to accomplish there. From my perspective, I think that the lot's working pretty well. There's open spaces every day except for those few events. And maybe it's just a question of us spending some time with those businesses that are using the lot long term when events are coming up, and just kind of try to, get on their goodwill and ask them to move for that event.
If we were to put 6 spaces and mark them for the ranger, do you think there's any way in the world that the ranger would encourage their employees to park a block and a half away and walk?
Was that a rhetorical question, or are you wanting an answer?
Your Honor, I'll be quoted in tomorrow's paper describing exactly the ranger's perspective on the issue. I really don't know.
Under duress and handcuffs, you could get them there, maybe?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Martin?
Mike Martin, Martin Lumber. We were also part of the deal when they paid for that thing. And nobody from my business ever parked there. But I really don't think it's fair that you let all these commercial vehicles park there at no charge for 11 months a year and they pay nothing.
That's right.
I just don't get that. You know, Kusel's has 2 or 3 garbage bins set up that they use permanently on city ground. This is all on city ground. The city owns all this. And yes, it will have to be redone. And why is it so hard to sell parking permits? You could sell monthly, yearly, whatever. This is not a tough thing to do, and you could make a lot of money on it. Those people would rather pay $20 a month or $30 a month for each one of those vehicles and go find a place for it on the street that's going to be in front of somebody's businesses, and you can bet they're going to call Mike when that happens. So they won't do that. And why don't they park them on their own property? That's what I don't get. There are a lot of people that use it at no expense, and nothing is free these days. You guys aren't exactly rolling in the fat, you know, so I don't see why you can't make some money on this.
Yeah. That was the point that I was trying to make, was that this is the city's parking lot. And the sting that I've had a lot of people, you know, express concern about, it's just a commercial parking lot for people that leave their vehicles there for extended periods of time. That wasn't what it was intended for. That wasn't who paid for it. And as I indicated, having built a parking lot, I know how expensive those darn things are, and so it wouldn't be unreasonable, I think, for us for the long term. I'm not suggesting that, you know, people that don't spend the night there, that just come and go, you know, we should try to hone down on them. I think they're citizens, and that's not what the intent is. But I think if you're going to take a commercial vehicle and park it in there and leave it for a week, then it should cost you something. So anyway, is there any other comments that anybody would like to?
So Your Honor, are you suggesting then that we go to the 7 businesses that are using that and put a proposition to them that long-term parking is $30 a month, $1 a day, and then have them apply for as many vehicles as they would like to park in there?
Something along those lines. I think you'd want to sit down and have a discussion with them first and see what their reaction is, you know, and say, this is what we're thinking about. How would you feel about this, Sorrento? You know, it's...
Well, even for employers that are on Main Street that feel like their business is impacted by parking, they should encourage their own employees to park in that parking lot, even if they've got to walk a block and a half. And so, you know, there are ways to positively affect this, and you know, I just don't want to end up with an empty parking lot and everybody parking away and feeling like they've got to get a permit and an assigned number.
Well, I think anything that you put in place has the potential of failing. And I think if we come back in next year and it's an empty parking lot, then you might want to do away with the parking permits and say, well, that was a good idea, but it didn't work. You know, it's not something that we're engraving in stone necessarily. So,
well, it would be easy to plow the snow if it was vacant.
That's, I think, has been the argument all along, that you can't plow the snow in that area because the vehicles are left there for extended periods of time. So,
Your Honor?
yes, Councilman Fabian.
I guess I see a couple of things here. The first is, I don't think we need to at all regulate people who park there, you know, during the business day, leave each night, come back the next day, you know, like an employee or business owner would do. But I do think that people who are leaving commercial vehicles, you know, for periods of time, that certainly is the issue. And I guess in my mind, something along the lines of, you know, if you're going to park in this parking lot for more than 48 hours, a permit is required, and then let it be from there. You know, we can set our permit fees and do whatever we need to do from that point. And we can also ask the permitted individuals to park their vehicles in a certain area of the parking lot, so that if we did want to try to plow some snow, we would that area might not get plowed, but we could
Long-term
get the
parking area.
majority of it out of there. I mean, if they're dotted all over the parking lot, it does become impossible. Obviously, people who live down there, at the, what is it called? The Sertoma? People who live there certainly, have the right to park a vehicle and leave it. But again, I think we can, if we took the initiative to say, if you're going to be leaving vehicles long term, you need a permit and you need to be in this area, then we could open it up not only for the ability to plow snow, but the ability to have an event there. And when big events happen, it wouldn't be trying to, park around these vehicles that are taking up 5 spaces because they're parked sideways with a trailer. I guess that, we could even maybe look at the design of the parking and say, okay, you're going to be parking a truck and trailer. Well, maybe that's priced differently than somebody just parking a van or something like that. But the day-to-day use, that's what that parking lot is intended for, is the day-to-day use.
Agree.
But I guess that's my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you. Any
Yeah.
other comments? Yes, Councilman Christensen.
So I have a question for the chief. So the long-term parking down there, now, like I said, just the last 2 weeks, I've been watching it. So it seems to me there's only a couple vehicles that don't move. I mean, I wasn't marking tires or checking license plates, but there was a couple that didn't seem to move. The rest leave in the morning, or they're used daily, or except for on weekends, I suppose. Have you noticed anything like that? Because what I'm worried about, if we do the permits, do all this, they can park on the street. I don't think there's an ordinance that they can't. I don't know if they can leave them long-term there. I see some vehicles on the street for long-term on the side streets. I just think it's just gonna, if there's no complaints, or as you voiced before, I just think it's a courtesy thing. If there's an event or something, just call them, say, hey, move your vehicle so that, so there's plenty of parking. But that's my 2 cents on it. I just foresee a lot of those vehicles going on the street, and that's going to make another mess. So that's.
Your Honor.
Thank you.
Yes.
I guess my one concern that is, a lot of people, I guess, don't feel like there's a problem, and maybe there isn't right now, in terms of, what people consider a problem. But there's 2 aspects. Number one is you're allowing this business who chooses to just use the city parking lot as their yard to park vehicles. That's unfair to other businesses who spend the money to have their own yard for their own vehicles. And number 2, this has the potential to turn into a big problem, because if there's 7 different businesses parking down there right now, I mean, it'll only take a few more to have much of a fleet to really fill that parking lot up. And I don't know, it doesn't sit right with me that the city parking lot that's for the citizens and the business owners of downtown should be used as a long-term storage lot for commercial purposes.
Okay. Any other comments? Councilman Guard.
Chief, isn't there an ordinance that requires you to not park on Main Street from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m.? Am I correct with that?
That's correct. Main Street is basically to prevent long-term overnight parking. And then there's 2-hour parking on each of the side streets off of Main for a block.
Okay. So, as when we did Mammoth Music, there was a guy that had a motorcycle and a car that parked on Main Street and lived above the Acme. And he just parked there because he couldn't read those signs, I suppose. And yet, we do need a place for those cars to go. And so I agree that it's not a bad idea to do something there. And I don't know exactly how to get the wheels under it to push it. If you want to write an ordinance that you have to have to park in that city parking, that you have to have a long-term parking permit if you stay past 24 hours. And because even the people that are parking on Main Street, that they're living in apartments, if they get pushed into that parking lot, they would still only be parking evenings and leaving in the morning. Unless it's a long, if they have multiple vehicles, they might be able to leave one in there. So, yeah, I don't see a problem at all with writing some kind of ordinance. And like the mayor says, if it goes vacant and causes a problem, we may have to come back and change it. But, we might as well at least attempt to do something instead of just let the thing sit there. I'm another believer that we need more signage. If you don't know that there's ample parking, and you may have to walk 2 blocks to a store, but you don't have to wait for parallel parking. That would maybe encourage people to park in that parking lot and then walk to whatever store they want to go to. But it seems like we just keep circling the block until one opens. Thank you.
Okay,
Your Honor,
yes, Councilman, or
one
Mr.
thing
Weaver.
that the chief and I talked about was that solution alone without the parking permit. We're trying to find something that would be the easiest to enforce and still have the impact of getting rid of the commercial vehicles. Because if you said that in the parking lot that you can't park there between 3 and 6 o'clock in the morning or 2 to 5, and no commercial vehicles or trailers, that eliminates the issue of people that are residential that are parking there. They can park there overnight, and that's fine. If the intent is to get the commercial out of there, we felt like that solution would be the easiest, because the minute you start doing parking permits, the amount of money you collect in fees doesn't even pay for the time it takes to collect it all. I guess the intention is, if the intention is trying to make money, then maybe that's the way to go. But if the intention is truly just to get the long-term commercial out of there, the solution of 2 to 5 or 1 to 3, that alleviates the long-term parking of commercial vehicles in that lot.
I'm not sure that I see the one that's self-exclusive of the other. It seems to me like it's a fairness issue, that when I drive by it and knowing the history of that lot and see it used as a commercial parking lot, it galls me every time I drive by it, quite frankly. If they were paying $25 a vehicle to park there, that would take a lot of the sting out of it that we could then use to take care of the vegetation around, the snow removal or whatever. But to be just providing that free gratis at the citizen's expense, I think is not correct. I'm not enthusiastic about pushing the commercial vehicles out on our streets, our public streets. I agree with that. But it's their responsibility as a business owner to provide parking spaces for their vehicles, not the city's. And that's, I know when the last time we went through a agreement with the Department of Agriculture for the USDA building, we had to buy the house next door and demolish that house and then build a parking lot so that we could provide the number of parking spaces, off-street parking. We couldn't count the parking spaces on the street. We couldn't even count those. It had to be off-street parking that was available to them. And it was expensive, let me tell you. It was right at about $80,000. And so parking spaces are expensive. And for a company to be able to park 5 or 6 vehicles there anytime they want, indiscriminately, it's free. And that just isn't the way that we should be going. I think it's not a good use of the citizens' resources that we're responsible for. So,
Your Honor,
yes.
I guess my thought in reference to what Mr. Weaver just said is that if these companies had adequate parking for those vehicles, they would be parking them at their place of business or at their business lot or whatever. And I think telling them you can't park there will definitely put them on the street. And I don't think that's what we want to accomplish, but I think that most businesses would realize that, they don't have adequate space to park their vehicles and they're required to provide a spot to park them, or that, they're making do with what's available, which happens to be the city's parking lot. And I don't see any reason why asking them to pay a fee to park their vehicles there overnight you know, in the long term is out of line at all. That's what, you know, either you build your own parking lot, which is expensive, or you pay to use someone else's, which can be expensive.
And I don't think we should, be gouging them or, anything like that, but, and I have no idea what a monthly parking lot fee would be, but,
Your Honor,
yes,
I guess
Councilman Christensen.
question I have, I don't know all of the 7 businesses, but the ones I do know, do they own property downtown? I know several of them do in that immediate area, so that's, I'm not sure.
I do think that a couple of those businesses, some of those businesses are located.
Uh-huh.
One that is not right downtown, another one of the companies that uses that a lot. They have a corporate office, most of the operations.
Okay, thank you.
And I don't think we need to be onerous about it, I would try to work with them and, but, any other comments? Councilman Smith, you've been very quiet.
Your Honor, I just had a couple questions for the chief. If we were to go to some sort of a permit for commercial vehicles, I guess my first question is, how easy do you think that would be to enforce? Number 2, how high of a priority would that be with already stretched time with your staff of regulating parking?
No, Your Honor, I think it comes to one of those issues that the more limited the parking by the month, that's going to create a lot more work to regulate that. An annual parking permit, a fairly easy thing to do. Again, the more specific we make the regulation, the easier it will be to enforce. So if the regulation was no commercial vehicles, 2 a.m. to 5 a.m., or no commercial vehicles without a permit, 2 a.m. to 5 a.m., then a patrolling officer can drive through and take a look at that when they have time. There is dead time during the night. The onerous part comes when we have to have someone chalk a tire, go back and check that to make sure it hasn't rolled. You start talking about a vehicle can't be there more than 48 hours. Frankly, that becomes so onerous that no one's going to do it. How are you going to keep track of a vehicle for 48 hours to make sure it didn't just move to another spot? That becomes somewhat problematic. So, Mr. Weaver said, if we posted a sign that was very clear and specific to what we were trying to accomplish, I think it would be easy to enforce. That's not to say it's going to be enforced rigorously every day, but certainly an officer patrolling through can check to make sure that issue a citation as necessary.
Your Honor,
Yes.
would it also help if we did in fact say, these are the long-term parking areas, to say, these are where the commercial vehicles ought to be, so that it's easy to tell, well, there's one over there, obviously they're probably not in compliance.
Yes, sir. Again, it's a question of signage. If you're going to say half the lot, no commercial vehicles ever, decide by permit parking only or something, that's done.
And if you said by permit parking only, you could, at the time when they get their permit, it'd be easy to specify, you need to park in these areas, these are the permitted parking areas.
I have to back that up though by saying, you always have to be aware of the guy who comes into town, parks their vehicle there, and is suddenly non-compliant. No idea that they're non-compliant. Without proper signage, there's just no point in trying to enforce that. Or is it fair to do that?
I agree.
I agree.
Okay.
Your Honor,
Yes, Councilman Guard.
nor do we want a citizen to drive by and say, I don't have a permit, so I won't park there, and partially read the sign or not understand what the sign's trying to accomplish. So, we really have a hybrid problem of, we want, when you say parking comes at a premium, it truly does. If you're in Salt Lake, you pay a high price to get close to where you want to be. I don't think we have that here. I just don't. And so for us to, and the question is, would the businesses pay to have a parking spot? They've already had a parking spot. So Mr. Gore, we ticket his 2 vehicles. I don't know that we even had to use an officer. This is something that probably Rosie could do in compliance, just to come by and say, you've been parked way too long in one location. The city has this ordinance, you'll need to comply. Here's the permit to get a long-term, it's X amount of dollars. If they don't comply, then we can use one of our officers in blue. But I just see a whole lot of problems with how you determine who is a business and who's an individual, and we really do want it used. I mean, the real glee would be to drive by there and see the whole parking lot being used, and the downtown was being walked and shopped. And I think anything that we do that gets restrictive, it causes that to not be an opportunity for somebody that thinks they don't have the right permit to park in that parking lot. And so I think we need to get fairly specific in what it is so that people have an easy use of that parking lot. And right now, the nature is not to search out. That's an easy parking spot. I mean, you can drive down there and park anytime you choose, and then choose to walk 2 blocks. It's only 2 blocks to the post office from there. And yet we don't. And you can, you see people circling the post office 5 times before they finally illegally park and go in and get their mail. And so, I don't know how we change that nature of somebody to actually do the easy thing, is park where it's free and cheap. And the disappointment is that when you do pull in there, it's cluttered with all these different vehicles. Like Mr. Martin says, it's got trash boxes, containers in it. It's got all sorts of stuff. And to be real frank, it's not odd to go by and see a whole parking lot full of furniture waiting to go into a store. And so it's multi-use. And I would really like to see it used more fully, but I just don't know that we can chase people in there.
Yes. Councilman Larson.
First
Washington.
Because it's First Interstate, and yet that parking lot at 12 o'clock is full.
It doesn't have a sign out there that says public parking either.
It says for employees.
That's right. Where on our parking lot, we have 2 signs at each entrance, public parking. It doesn't say city public parking, it just says public parking. So for people that haven't lived here for years, they don't recognize, I think, who owns it or anything at all about it. So at any rate. Have you gotten enough direction, Mr. Weaver, do you think, to come up with something?
I think we can figure something out.
Okay. This ought to be interesting to see what that is.
So, Your Honor,
Yeah.
so we are going
Christensen.
to, you're looking at a fee for those permits. So those permits should be pretty pricey to pay for everybody to do all this work. I'm a little worried about that. I think the side streets are going to be filled up. I think, if I remember correctly, when we had the issue with parking on Main, the apartment dwellers, we had that group come in that live up above several places there. I mean, they don't want to walk a block, and when it's 20 below. I just don't see the problem. There's no complaints about it. Well,
Yeah.
Well, Your Honor, if you go in the parking lot now, nobody's painted those lines in a lot of years. So we're not maintaining it very well currently. I mean, if it looked up to speed, maybe I'd be a little bit more
Maybe we-
concerned about that. You can't even read the handicap spots in that. You gotta look real hard, because my daughter can't find them, and she's handicapped. So, well, if you, I
Please
walk through
address the
there.
council.
yeah,
Please address the chair.
Your Honor, if you walk through there, you have to look for blue. pretty hard. We haven't painted those lines in a long time, so,
Okay,
thank you.
you bet. Okay, agenda item number 7, public hearing, Parks and Trails Master Plan Committee request for public input on the future vision for Riverton's Parks and Trails. Craig Blumenshine report.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. At your direction, you composed a city planning committee to generate for this body a master plan for Riverton's parks and trails. The committee has been meeting since the first of the year. We've toured the parks. We've done, I think, a lot of pre-planning. And now we're at the point where we really want to entertain public comment relative to Riverton's parks and trails. What people really like about our parks, what they don't like about our parks and trails, what amenities they would like to see in the future for Riverton's parks and trails. So that then later on, years from now, when this body meets to look at improvements for its parks and trails, it will have a plan to do so. And so we've been very excited to embark upon this process. We have an online survey that we have made available to the public for the past 4 or 5 days. I just checked just a moment ago, and we've had 64 of those surveys completed. We would encourage anyone who's listening tonight to go online to gofremontcounty.com/parks. If they would like to complete that survey, it'll be available for another couple days. We'll compile all of that information for you and certainly use it as we compose and think about the city's parks and trails master plan. So with that, I know, Mr. Mayor, that there are some people that want to visit with you tonight and that have their input relative to the plan. We kind of envisioned this as a one-way discussion, not necessarily a debate, but for all of us to hear from citizens as to what, again, the 3 things that we'd like to hear from anyone who visits tonight, including yourselves, perhaps, is what you really like about our parks, what you don't like about our parks and trails, and what amenities you've seen in other communities, parks and trails that you think might be nice to have here. So that just as you look at your sewer plan when you make capital project improvements, or your water plan, at the beginning of next year, you'll have a parks plan. So that's why we're here tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
The chair would entertain a motion for the public hearing.
I'd make a motion to open public hearing.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. I now declare the public hearing is open. The hearing will be conducted in accordance with state statutes and other applicable laws. I would ask those individuals wishing to address the council to approach the podium and identify yourself for the record. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to speak up about our parks? Come right up to the podium, please. Kelly and Sarah. Oh, no.
Do anything alone.
We work well together.
Please identify yourself for the record if you can.
I am Kelly Gard,
Sarah Remackle.
and we're one of the owners of Renew Fitness Studio and the founders of the Renew Running Club, which is 50 members strong. We would like to speak more specifically about the bike path, because that's what we use the most.
Or lack thereof at this point.
Yeah, I was out last year, early morning, when those people were discovered. Sorry. And I was going to go on that area where the people were discovered, and I decided not to. And ever since then, we have been fairly terrified of the bike path. That's not the only incident. It can be very scary on the bike path, and we discussed perhaps we need to go to Lander to run, but we kind of looked at each other and said, no, we need to make our city where we want to be. And so we've been encouraging our runners to use the bike path. We've handed out how many cans of mace?
Yeah, we have independently been running a Operation Reclaim the Bike Path, and basically just making our presence known that we're not going anywhere, just because that's how we are. We're stubborn.
We've handed out 50 plus.
Yeah, we had a race, and my husband is he works for the Department of Corrections, and he is a certified mace, whatever that is. There's a technical name, but anyway, he showed us and demonstrated how to use that. So we are encouraging our runners to be armed when they run, whether that's with mace or with a firearm.
And so we're encouraging people to use that. We say that with a little hesitation because we would feel awful if one of them got hurt while they're out. But it is a very intimidating place to go. If when there's 4 men walking at you and they aren't budging and you have to move, it's scary. So I guess we just want to put out there, we're trying to tell people to use it. And we think a community effort to say, if we use it, we will push people off that don't belong there. That's to an extent. That's kind of our feeling. I think what Go Fremont County doing is awesome to improve it, but it doesn't matter how nice the bike path is. If I'm too scared to be on it, I won't. I mean, we have literally been going to go on the bike path, but taken a different path because there are too many sketchy characters in that direction. So that's kind of just what we wanted to state. We would like it to be used. It's a nice bike path. We want to stay in our community, but it is scary at times, and we don't go alone. And I think it could be so nice. Want to add anything?
No, that's really it. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. We think this is great.
Thank you. That's concerning. Chief, do you have any comments or anything?
Your Honor, I agree that I hate to hear comments like that about.
I do too.
Spoken in the past. I think we all, Mike's dead, sorry.
Oh,
I think we all have to acknowledge that crime occurs everywhere in a free society. Right? We allow people to come and go as they please. That's the very basis of our liberty. And there's always going to be people who take advantage of that for criminal purposes. And so I applaud them for trying to find ways for people to protect themselves. Ultimately, personal safety is a personal issue. With that said, the police department certainly has a responsibility to this community to try to make it as safe as possible. I have to tell you that we talked about this 2 or 3 years ago, that as we push to clean City Park up, until we solve the underlying problem, we're just going to displace the problem. And the problem has been largely displaced the trail system. That is a consequence of us cleaning up City Park. Again, we take about 2,000 people a year into custody for public intoxication. Somewhere around 1,600 to 1,800 go to detox, and the other 200 or 300 or 400 now are going to jail for public intoxication. Until we can find good strategies, and I have to tell you, I have a message for you about this, but until we can solve those underlying problems, we're not going to solve the problem. We simply cannot arrest people fast enough to cure them of not going to happen. We have been crunching a lot of numbers since VOA has come to town. I think there is some positive movement in a downward trend of public intoxication. VOA has sent, I think they're maybe pushing 30 people in the last year away to treatment. That, again, we know that that's going to work for some folks long term, and for some folks, you're going to have to go a few times to get that done. You know, we've had a real changeover of our sort of commonly contacted public intoxicants. I'm heartened by that. I think that our numbers of January through June were significantly lower than they were over the last 5 years in the same time period. But I think we really need to wait until we have a good full year's worth of data to make sure that we're actually seeing those kinds of positive impacts. You know, DUI arrests have declined annually for 5 years. Traffic fatalities, we had a really bad year a couple of years ago countywide, and that has significantly declined. There are a lot of people in this community working hard to solve that problem. The Solutions Committee is meeting weekly to try to address that. Injury Prevention Resources has programs in place to try to address that. The Division of Family Services is working with us to correct that. Volunteers of America is working to correct that. So I'm disheartened to hear that people are afraid to exercise in the public places. At the same time, I think there are a lot of strategies working to try to solve those underlying problems.
do you support their efforts in carrying mace with them then, or?
You know, Your Honor, I am regretful that they feel that they have to do that, but again, I have to say that you know, when seconds count, the police are minutes away. It's kind of a cliche, but the fact of the matter is, most of the time, we have 2 police officers on the street in this community. And to police 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, takes a significant amount of personnel. And we frankly don't have that amount of personnel. And as our city continues to grow, as 100 new potential families move to town for Job Corps, we've got to find a way to get the police department to keep up with staffing, because simply our calls for service have gone up every year over the last 5 years, and I don't see any reason that they're going to start declining. And so it's a significant issue, and it has a significant cost factor. Personal safety, again, to answer the question though, is personal responsibility, and so I applaud them for taking that step to protect themselves. Just as a professional peace officer, I regret that they have to do that.
I agree. Thank you, Chief. I appreciate your comments.
Your Honor?
Yeah, yes.
I have a-
Councilman Christensen.
I have a question. When you say the trails, is it the rails to trails? Is it 8th Street also? Because when we're talking about the master plan, I want to make sure that they're all included if they do need to be.
Do you want to come up to the
Looked at.
microphone, Kelly?
The path specifically we concern most about goes from Monroe through Main Street to Federal. That's the one that's the most concerning. 8th Street is honestly not maintained very well, and so the weeds, I mean, that's a whole different issue. I don't feel unsafe there.
You don't? Okay.
No, Riverview is completely unusable right now. But specifically, it's that one all the way out to Country Acres. We have not used that path from Webwood to Country Acres but once since last year, and there was 5 of us that went. And I did want to say I was out running Saturday, and I don't know if he was doing it on purpose, but I saw a police officer 5 times as I was running on the path, and I greatly appreciated that. I don't know if he was tracking me, but I was by myself, and I did feel, I felt very appreciated every time I saw him. So just wanted to add that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Hello, Claire Peart. I am a mother of 3, 6, almost 4, and 10-month-old. And my concern is mostly with the parks. We have sort of stopped using the city parks, and we go play more at the school district playgrounds. Generally, it's because of maintenance, safety, and the other park users. I feel a lot of times the parks, they're almost just like a dumping ground for their kids. The kids are not being watched by their parents. They're in the car, they're not there. There's a lot of absentee parenting. The kids are fairly disrespectful, not using great language, and I just don't want to, have my kids around that if I can avoid it. JC Park specifically, we raise so much money for it, and it's so sad. I mean, it's deteriorating. The fence posts where, people, they've purchased their names, their kids' names, their business names, they're broken. I mean, there's gaping holes in those fences. Could we have that as an ongoing fundraiser? I would buy one. I didn't have kids when JC Park was revitalized, but I have kids now, and I definitely would buy those to have a maintenance fund for JC Park. I think Landers City Park, it was revitalized, the playground area, about the same time JC Park was here. It's immaculate. The wood chips it looks like they're replaced often. JC Park, we're down inches. A lot of times that black barrier, that lining is visible. It's torn. There's weeds coming through. It doesn't seem like it's been dealt with since it was, that revitalization happened years ago. Ryan Park, it's hard to play soccer there. The grass is incredibly long. The kids kick it, and then they kick it again. We can't build those skills if we don't have the grass cut. The mosquitoes are terrible. And I know that we're close to the water, I get that. But it's hard to go and want to be there when you're waving mosquitoes away, you know, spraying your kids with bug spray. It's not fun. I live just a block away from Teeter Park, and it was such a, you know, fun little quiet park. We'd walk, play. There's a tree there that we call the Heidi tree. There's some branches broken out, and we'd go and, you know, play and hide and seek there. And Broadway has been opened up, fantastic, but now there's a little more pedestrian traffic, and there's a lot more trash there. Not people, like literally trash. There's bottles, broken bottles, cigarette butts, you know, just general trash. It seems like there's maybe not the greatest behavior happening in that tree. It's kind of secluded now, and so that's too bad. So we don't get to go there anymore. The playground equipment there is incredibly dated. So it's just the equipment is a big issue, I think, at a lot of parks too. It's not fun to play on. The kids don't love it. It's too bad that our parks are not fun. In Fort Collins, splash pads, you know, and I know that they have more money. It's a bigger area, but it's so fun to put our swimsuits on, go down, you know, to Old Town, and be able to do that fun. So that would, you know, that's something that I think would be great to have. So equipment, for sure. And I also wonder if there was some, and I know the staffing is an issue, but if we had park attendants, or call boxes, or something that made people accountable for their use at the park, would the vandalism be less? Would the damage of the equipment be less? Would parents be more accountable if they knew that they were, you know, not being watched, but that it was, you know, a more involved process, that you can't just go dump your kids off, they're going to say the F word and be disrespectful to everybody? Would that change? So we like the parks, we want to use them more, but we can't. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to? Yes.
Good evening. My name is Suzanne Kreitzer. I am new to the community. I've been here about a year now. And I saw this, you know, little post on Facebook about this meeting tonight. I just felt compelled almost to say to my husband, here, you go do all the chores tonight. I've got to go to a meeting. But this last summer, I worked specifically with our middle school students. And as we worked with them, we asked them, you know, what do you wish we could change about this community? Their project for the summer was, you know, basically talking about what to do with Tonkin Stadium. But the underlying thing that I heard was there is not a safe place for them to go. And I said, well, what would you do? What could we do to make things more safe, a better atmosphere, a place that you would want to go? And the responses were astounding. They came up with projects that came up with funding and with ways to pay for things, ways to maintain, anywhere from, you know, a tax bond to proposals for writing grants to asking large corporations to help fund. But the underlying thing I heard was, you know, there's not a safe place. We don't want to go to the parks because there's people there that, you know, are not very savory. And that's a polite way of putting what they had said. But one of the most interesting things I heard was from the kids is, you know, why can't we have something, a place to go that provides us something fun, and not just a skate park. And the skate park is a fantastic place for these kids to go. But they were also asking, why can't the city, or why can't we as a community come together and build a place like a splash pad, or a place for kids to go, not only teenagers or, you know, mid-tweens, but for families. That is a safe and fun environmental place to go that would be a great opportunity for these, you know, for us as families. I can tell you from my personal experience, we've only gone to a handful of parks, and the last time I was at JC Park, I wish I would have had a bar of soap, because I'm the kind of mom that will go over and I will tell those kids, eat the soap, clean out your mouth, I'm tired of hearing it. But my kids, my youngest one, she's 8, she said, Mom, I like going to the park, but these people, they have potty mouths. And these are little kids that are, 4 and 5, that are just dropping the F-bomb everywhere and cussing. And granted, that's how they speak at home. However, I think that's one of the reasons our parks aren't being used. So I just wanted to share that with you. It just from my perspective, from what I saw coming from our teenagers, that, we're here, they said, we don't like the drug use. We want some place to go. We want to help. We want to be involved, but we don't know how. And so that's what I wanted to share with you.
Thank you very much. Any comments regarding things that have been said? Anyone else want to join in? Mr. Gores?
Once again, I'm Jim Gores. While I'm obviously well past the age of child rearing, I can certainly relate to the folks that have expressed their interest in having safe parks. Mine is more in the line of trying to keep my physical health up, which is all of us at this age group become more concerned with. Anyway, to cut to the chase, our trail system has been built in most cases a couple of decades ago or beyond, and that was the last time anything was done with it. As all of you know, I'm certainly no stranger to the cost of constructing those facilities or maintaining them. But it's, at least in my personal opinion, a real waste of public funds and neglect of public funds to simply let those trails go unmaintained, and they largely do. Putting in just a modest effort at periodic crack sealing, keep the weeds from growing up through those trails and deteriorating the asphalt, and periodically getting a chip seal on them or something, which is not a large amount of money, certainly in comparison to reconstruction. I think would do an awful lot for our trail system, and as well as promoting some of the efforts to get them looped as the Riverwalk effort is being developed. Would go a long way toward at least helping that aspect of our recreation system within the community. And we as a firm have volunteered our efforts in more than one instance to try and further that effort. And I'd offer that again this evening, that we would step up to help the recreation organizations in the community to develop things like reconstruction of the North 8th and West pathway, and the Riverview pathway, which is, both of those are in such decline that they're essentially non-existent or non-functional. And our Rails to Trails pathway is, in my personal opinion, not far behind in terms of its rate of decline, and that can be, I believe, fairly easily remedied with some appropriation of maintenance funding and getting that done. And those pathways, I think, have kind of at least from my observation, kind of become a stepchild to the system, and neither the county nor the city wanting to take them on, and understandably so, but that doesn't solve the problem. And and any of those things, certainly our parks and trails lend a lot to the attractiveness of the community and the sense of security that people have, and the sense of opportunity that they have to have an enjoyable lifestyle here, where they can safely take their kids on a walk or go on a bike ride or play in the park or whatever. And, you know, that is a critical component to what we as a community provide and do. So, thank you, and we'd be glad to help in any way we can.
Thank you, Jim.
Your Honor,
Yes, Councilman Christensen.
just one thing I want to say, and I hope I say this the right way, because I do understand everybody's concerns. I do want to say that I feel, well, since I've been on city council, I've learned tons. I feel that the chief is doing, and the officers are doing a great job with some of the issues that were brought up. Personally, the one thing that has helped me, because I've had those same opinions and feelings about different people in different situations, I just think one way to maybe alleviate and maybe feel safer or some form of security about that. There's a lot of events that we have in City Park, and that may involve, usually do, that involve some of the people we're talking about. And I personally have learned a lot, and I think the chief would say the same. I don't want to speak for you, but a lot of these folks that maybe we might be a little bit afraid of or don't understand, I have just been, they know me now. And I'm not maybe so apprehensive to approach them or to get to know them, or I understand them a little bit more. They still have problems. Everybody has problems. But I think if everybody gets involved in some of those things that are going on in our community, I think we all form a better understanding. And I please know I do understand, because I have grandkids and I go on the path and I want everyone to be safe. But I just want people to understand all the citizens. And I think a good way to do it for me was to involve myself in community events that involved, to try to help alleviate some of these problems. It really, really helped me. I don't know if the chief has anything to say about that, but it's a lot of those folks are very, very, very nice. But I was personally maybe a little frightened of some of the events I went to, but I just learned a lot. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Kelly Godey. I hear what you're saying. I've lived in the Ash Grove neighborhood for 20 years, and I run on Rails to Trails a lot over the last 20 years. It has changed immensely. It's not safe anymore. And the issue is not whether you know people or not. It's people who are under the influence of alcohol who are walking together in groups. If it's one or two people, they don't have the riot mentality. They won't make bad choices. When they walk together in 4 to 6, they make bad choices. And I have 2 running friends who have actually been attacked and tried to find help and were very fearful. Couldn't find help and couldn't get to some place that they felt safe to find help. I've had a similar situation myself. So it's not just an issue of whether you know people or not, because I've worked on the reservation for 20 years.
Sure.
I have very good friends. It's not the same issue.
Yeah,
It's people under the influence, walking together in large groups, making bad choices.
Sure.
So you can't go to an area anymore. It's my neighborhood. I live there every day. I don't choose to use the Rails to Trails when I'm by myself anymore. It's just not safe. So I choose to go other places. We do have other trails that are safer, but if we had a call box, if we had, a plan that we were teaching our community, what do I do in this situation? How do I prepare for certain things? How do I help people in certain situations who may need help? I mean, I have a friend in this audience who found somebody who was passed out under the influence in our neighborhood. It's very scary at 5:30 in the morning when you're walking your dogs and you find somebody passed out in a ditch. I mean, what do we do? How do we handle that? I mean, do we always need to be carrying our cell phones? What can we do in this community to help each other understand what to do in those emergency situations, because they're happening more and more often.
Sure.
And we want to feel, like you said, we want to feel safe.
Yes.
So,
And I understand what you're saying. I don't mean to dismiss the fears. It's just that.
and I know what you're
the
saying.
effort. Yeah.
And I know what you're saying. You know, we have to get to know different people in different situations and understand their perspectives and where they're coming from. But when we are not dealing with the people who are under the influence and they keep making the same choices, the bad choices over and over again, and we keep putting them out there in our community, we're not fixing the problem. We've got to figure out what do we need to do with the people who are making those bad choices that we keep seeing in the newspaper over and over and over again. And we know they're out there making bad choices. They're soliciting, they're under the influence all the time. You know, they're hanging out with people who are making bad choices and, you know, scaring other people. And we have to fix that, and we need to do it together, whether it be education, you know, whether it be, you know, planning, call boxes, but we have to figure out and get it publicized so we can all help each other.
I think we do have a call box in City Park now. Along the trails, I do not think
There's
we have
nothing
any.
along the trail.
No.
Thank you for listening.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kelly. Anyone else want to weigh in on this subject?
Is there anyone else that wants to? I'm Doug Bebout. I know some of you, Mayor. I agree. I just wanted to back what the chief says. I mean, City Park has gotten great. I mean, I have worked at Detox. I've worked at the Good Samaritan shelter. And when I would walk to the Good Samaritan shelter, I used to avoid City Park, and I hated even walking by the bike trail, you know, off of Main Street, because I was afraid, and I know these people because of where I've worked, that I would be approached either for money or somebody would stick a bottle in my face or whatever. I just think there's an underlying problem, and, you know, we are hurting people around. And City Park has gotten better. You know, I learned while I was down at the shelter that we didn't have the people showing up at the shelter all the time, drunk, and I just don't know what the solution is. You know, I was sitting back there and I was thinking, you know, there used to be, I don't even know if there's an active neighborhood watch anymore, but I've seen signs for that, and maybe that's something where we could have citizens involved in certain sections of the trails. I don't know. I don't know what the solution is, but there is an underlying cause, and not all the people that have left the park have gone into recovery. They go somewhere, and then, you know, the chief is also correct. They may go into a rehab and come back, and not a lot of them stay in recovery after they go to the rehab. So we are, in a sense, hurting people around. And, you know, it used to be the City Park and the bike trail. Now City Park, and I think most of the other parks that are off that main vein is what they're talking about, from I guess Monroe to Webwood Road, basically. There is a lot of, you know, traffic on that, and I personally would have avoided as well because of the reasons I stated. But I don't know what the solution is. Like I said, not everybody that goes to jail or goes to rehab or detox is going to recover and not return back to the community. So I don't know. I just wanted to back what the chief said and agree that there is a problem and that City Park has gotten a lot better. I feel a lot safer there. And but there's that underlying problem that's always going to be there. So I don't know how to fix it right now. That's all I had. Thank you.
Matt Wright, with the Central Wyoming Skateboarding Association, as well as on the committee, the Parks and Trails Master Plan Committee. I've enjoyed being a part of that, and I think good work is being done under the leadership of Craig Blumenshine. And to bring it back to parks, it's unfortunate that we have to go into this discussion of addiction and all this when we're really just trying to make a master plan about our parks. And I spend most of my time as far as spending time in parks, I spend most of my time in City Park because I'm a skateboarder. And it's more of out of sight, out of mind for me now because it's cleaned up so much. But obviously it's affecting other people in the town as well. I don't use the trails, so anyway, I want to say in my time talking with public, with friends on Facebook and things, a splash pad seems unanimous. There's a lot of young mothers who would love to see a splash pad. And I would just encourage, from my experience, 2 years ago, the skate park thing, the project was a very far-fetched idea. It was like, let's dream big and get this huge concrete structure and work for it and really try to raise our own money. And it took Chris McNeil to help me see that vision. And it's happening. And so I would encourage those, if you want a splash pad, power in numbers, and get people together and start coming up with some money for it, and it'll happen before you know it if you just try a little more. Then anyway, so not trying to use myself as an example, I guess, but it can be done and it is happening, and so I would encourage that. I had more to say, but we'll let Craig take the mic here. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Yes, Sarah.
Sorry, I had to come back. We were just chatting back there that we don't feel like this is a responsibility of putting a lot more on the police department. We do feel like this is a community kind of thing. I work with my husband who works in this kind of line of work, and it's exhausting. I mean, kudos to you guys for everything that you guys do for us, because it's a hard job and it's hard on families. So we had talked when we were kind of trying to figure out how we could help these moms and women, and a couple things that we had brought up in our own little meetings was the weed control. If there's a way that we could get the funding to get the actual roundup or whatever, we know people with four-wheelers and with the equipment that we can load that on, and we would be happy to have a volunteer group to help do the maintenance on that, because it is dangerous. It gets dangerous as a runner to have to step over huge weeds, or you're pulling goat heads out of your running shoes, you find them in your house, So we don't mind stepping up, and we know plenty of people who would help us do that. When the time changes and we go out and we do early morning runs, that is some of the scarier times because you really can't see what you're running into. So some lighting on North 8th West. It's pretty dark there in the mornings. Again, if we can help find the funding to get those things up, we have people who can help us assemble and construct and patch, and we're not trying to put this on anybody else. We want to be involved. We want to help do that. Like anything, it all comes down to money. And if we can provide the labor, hopefully that helps you guys provide some options for us and say, this is what we can do to help you. What can you do to meet us halfway, kind of thing. So just some things maybe to chew on and visit about when we're not all around. But thank you for your service. I appreciate it. That was all I had.
Your Honor,
Thank you. Yes, Councilman Christensen.
you may want to go to, isn't there a program through Weed and Pest where the citizens can get some backpack and they pre-mix it and do whatever at a very low cost of any cost, because they're really, you may get a hold of them about that,
Yeah,
because
that'd be
they
great.
can outfit you with
Well, like we're friends with farmers and they have tons of that kind of equipment, so I'm not too worried about the equipment part of it and the labor part. It is the chemical. It's the, just making sure that it's not something you can just do once. We're gonna have to get on it because it's getting really.
Yeah, I remember they were talking about backpacks that they'll pre-mix and you just, bring it back.
So I hope that helps a little
Thank
bit.
you. I know Mr. Weaver has a blackboard in his office that has a lot of different projects on it, and that's another one he can add down there, I think. And that's a great idea, though, Sarah. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Sir, and I'll
Councilman
tack
Canal.
on to, what Mrs. Merrimack was talking about, and Mr. Weaver and I talked about this before, and I think also with you, is that, as you all know, money is tight with the city. We just went through the budget battle with trying to fund some of the organizations that volunteer and help around the city. And we talked before about getting people that would adopt sections of the rails to trails, or would adopt part of the city, different things around the city park. You see the signs on the highway all the time about organization has adopted the last 2 miles of a highway. And I think we can all agree is, it's much, probably the big thing that stops us is the labor costs. So, when you can get somebody, an organization or a group of individuals that says, hey, we'll adopt X number of miles of rails to trails, or, we'll adopt J.C. Park, for example, it probably does become easier to get somebody to have that corporate sponsor say, that's great, we'll kick in some money, you're providing the labor, you can, we got somebody now that'll fix the fence, paint the fence, put new wood chip down and those kind of things. So, we talked about that, is that, if you could get that around the city of Riverton, where different organizations would say, put my name on the next 2 miles of the bike path, and my organization is going to take care of that. And I think also that goes back to, just like we were talking about, what helped clean up City Park was getting more people in there, getting more things done in City Park. And I think, again, just like you talked about on the different rails to trails, other parks, you start seeing volunteers in there every weekend cleaning up, painting the fence, fixing the fence. You see that corporate sponsor sign on the fence, once again, you're probably going to see less and less, things happening in those areas, because again, you've got more activities going on. The same thing that helped clean up City Park is probably going to help clean up those other areas.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes, Councilman Garland.
Mr. Blumenshine kind of wanted a one-way street conversation, and so I'll leave my comments for another day. Thank you.
I would just like to say personally that we've touched on so many subjects here that, they're discouraging at times. And we've got a beautiful community and whatnot. When Matt was talking about the splash park, I remember when we were working on the Main Street reconstruction, and we were talking about the water feature in the park down there. And Mr. Gores helped with some of the design on that, as I recall. And a component of that was a splash park in the back of it. And that was the centennial project for the city of Riverton. Okay? That was supposed to be part of the whole project. And due to funding, it went away. And so now people say, well, what the heck are these river paths on our sidewalks? The water was running out of the water feature in the park, which was going to be a beautiful water feature that we had designed. And there are some of us that still have hopes that that will happen sometime in the future. But I run into too many people that look at it and say, God, what a waste of money. Anything that we invest, I think, in our community is not a waste of money. And this is our home, and we have to do those kinds of things to make it a place that we want to live. And so, the splash pad is just one thing. The rails to trails and the maintenance on it is important. And when we're talking about people that are addicted to alcohol, that's why I was pushing so hard on the beer tax. And I couldn't get anybody that was even interested in raise tax on beer. Oh my God, you're going to put us out of business. I mean, they act as though stupidity is a virtue. It's very frustrating. When you run up against these things, and yet we always come back to money, whether it's having people go to rehabilitation. It costs quite a bit of money to have a person to go to rehab, and then they don't go just once. I recall a psychologist saying that 5 to 7 times they have to go through the process before it finally sticks. And so it's, and yet these are people that barely have enough money for their next bottle of alcohol, and so they drink hand cleaner and sanitizer and stuff like that. I mean, a person has to be terribly sick to be able to want to do that. And yet, I don't know. Mr. Weaver and I just took a resolution down to the WHAM convention, and that resolution was to allow municipalities to tax themselves, so that if we did want a recreation center, which is very important to our community, okay, that was voted down by WHAM. And it was mainly the small communities that voted it down. There are significantly more small communities in Wyoming than there are large communities, okay? But their vote is the same. The vote at, I forget what, Reliance or someplace like that, it has the same voting power as Cheyenne. And yet their populations are hugely different. But if we could have had something like that, then we could bring something forth in our community that we want for our community and tax ourselves and make it happen. But the way it is now, we don't even have that ability to do it. And so we were able to pass the 1% so that we could do work on our roads, but that applies to roads. It doesn't apply to rails to trails. It doesn't apply to bike paths and yada, yada, yada. So it's a struggle. It really is. But it's discouraging when we have people. And I think it's the suggestion that Councilman Canaan has here is probably the secret, is that organizationally, if we can come together and decide how we can make these things work, then if it's getting with Weed and Pest and get their backpacks and getting Rotary together or whatever, I think we can make these things happen. But it's going to take all of us working together, and it is discouraging because I know how hard the police department works to have a safe community, and then to be told by the citizens that they're not safe. That's discouraging. That's really discouraging. So,
just to tie things up, Mr. Mayor, this is our home. And I think with our committee, you have at least a small group that's willing to invest a lot of time and effort into coming up potentially with at least a plan. And our schedule's ambitious. We meet twice a month. Certainly, we're looking forward to attacking many of these ideas that we've heard tonight. Mayor, the list is even longer if you look at the survey results that we're going to hand to you. There are many issues that are there. We're excited to work. I want to recognize the members of the committee, Mr. Mayor, that are here. Tara Carr is here. Maybe you'll just raise your hand. Mike Martin is here. George and Matt Ryder here. Councilman Fabian is our liaison to the council, and Kyle Nikolaev is also part of our committees in Washington, D.C. this evening. So thank you so much for listening. Councilman Guard, if you have more to say, we'd love to hear. Or you can sure visit with any of us later on, because there's a lot of work to do, and I think that, with Mr. Weaver's help and with your help, Mr. Mayor, and the council, and with the police's help, maybe we can do our little share here. So,
yes. I agree with you. This is our home, and we've got to make it better. So thank you very much for your efforts and the efforts of your committee. I've heard some really good things about it. Councilman Fabian keeps us plugged into what's going on, and so he says, I didn't realize there were so many parks around town. So he's got quite a few of them. So thank you again, Craig. We appreciate it. Is there anyone else that would like to address the council at this time? Mr. Bailey, you're awfully quiet. No. There you go. Had to rise.
Mike Bailey. I am running for office, so you can't give me that opportunity, I guess. Again, like the rest of these folks, I've lived in this community almost all of my life, and it is terrible that we have to worry about safety in our parks, but I think all of us together have to work on the problem. And I'd like to give credit to these gals for coming up with some solutions, because I think it's really easy. And in my years of being on the planning commission and around the city council and that kind of stuff, I think we get a lot of people coming to us with the problems, but not a lot of them coming with the solutions. And so I admire them for coming up with some ideas and volunteering their time and effort. And I think that's what we all have to do as citizens, is step up and pay a little back for the wonderful community that we live in. And that's what it takes. And this community has always been very, very generous in almost any activity you see. You know, you see fundraisers for all different kinds of activities, and this community is always very generous in supporting those and supporting people in need and all that kind of stuff. So I think if all of us just step up and go together, I think we can get a lot of these problems solved. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that word of encouragement, Mike. We appreciate it. Okay, the chair would entertain a motion to close the public hearing at this time.
Your Honor, I'd make the motion to close.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. I don't think there's any motion for action that we would have at this time. We've had a good meeting this evening, and I appreciate everyone taking the time and coming out and sharing your thoughts and ideas. And some of them are kind of hard to swallow, but anyway. Chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to adjourn.